Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellowshow. I'm your host, the Fellow KGB. You can follow me on Twitter at the Fellow KGB. And tonight I am joined by Drake Sanford. You can follow him on Twitter at the Fellow DES. I have his link in the description below on YouTube. But tonight we're talking fantasy hoops. We usually have John with us, but we're going to be doing something with John later in the week. I think he's been busy traveling. So for now, we're going to be hanging out with Drake. And we're gonna talk about what we've been looking at the first 2-3 games for each team so far through the season. We'll look at some injuries. We'll talk about some guys that have caught our eye, and then we're also gonna probably shout out some guys that should be owned, guys that we're looking at on our watch list and the waiver wire to help us get those wins early. So what's going on, Drake? Welcome to the show.
Hey, glad to be here, man. Just ready to talk some hoops. We got just coming off the Christmas week. We had a pretty interesting kind of standing sitting here looking at the top of the NBA. Is that my Cleveland Cavaliers in first?
Yeah, and this is why I wanted to start off with it. It does feel like, just looking at the East, there's 4 teams undefeated, and it's the Cavs, the Magic, the Pacers, and the Hawks. If anyone would have, if you would have told me that, leading into the season, I would have slapped your mom. But here we are, Cleveland Cavaliers, averaging 122.3 points per game. You being the resident Cleveland Cavaliers fan of the Fellowship, tell us a little bit about what we're seeing so far from them.
We're seeing what we want to see from Colin Sexton. He's making that next step, and he's putting up the points for you. Darius Garland has been, a nice addition as well. He might have been a guy on your waiver wires to pay attention to, so we'll hit on that later. Maybe he was drafted. I'm liking what we're seeing out of Garland. We're getting exactly what we thought we'd get out of Drummond, but this team hasn't seen Kevin Porter Jr. or Kevin Love really make an impact yet. So we could see some things down the line here for the Cavs.
Yeah, it's looking like a really strong starting rotation. We still haven't seen much of Isaac Okoro yet. I don't know he's got a little foot injury. I don't know the severity of that, but he's a little bit dinged up. We did see some flashes from him in the first couple games. And then we will be, in a little bit, we'll cover some of the guys that are injured here, but Kevin Love is out for, it looks like, at least 3 weeks. He has an MRI. He had an MRI yesterday on his right calf. So this is likely opening up some minutes here for Larry Nance Jr., and we did plan on talking about guys that should be available or might be available in your league. And Larry Nance Jr., at least for the next, 3 to 4 weeks, he's only about 51.4% owned. And this is a guy that you can plug in at the PF or the center position here. And he's been productive. When he gets the minutes, he's usually putting up monster points. You see the 54.5 there. Just a stat stuffer. Sometimes he'll go off for the assists, but he's always going to get those points and the rebounds. So a lot of good things here on Cleveland. Was there anything else that I guess caught your eye as we just kind of look at the standings, and just anything else that maybe has impressed you or something that has concerned you?
It's hard to take concerns away from the first 3 weeks. You look at what some of these teams have done. You look at the Mavericks the other night; they had the largest halftime lead. We've seen some, outlier scores. Maybe that continues throughout the season, maybe not. But that was one thing that kind of hit my eye, was how well the Mavericks took care of the Clippers the other night.
Yeah, and it was without. I don't know if Paul George played. I think Kawhi was just out for that one. I can't recall if George was out. But for me, it still feels like these teams are kind of in a half preseason mode. They're all playing, 10, 11, 12 guys. They're still figuring out minutes and rotations and just kind of figuring out their lineups that they like. And so we really haven't learned too much, I guess, from a fantasy basketball standpoint. We're still getting our big minutes and things from the studs. But just quickly looking at, the top, these are the top fantasy players per average game here. So Jokic, Harden, Drummond, Westbrook, McCollum sticks out here, being quite a bit more than Damian Lillard. But there's really no surprises. There's just a little bit of a different shuffle towards the top here. We really haven't seen much out of the Rockets yet. I think they've only played the 2 games. But this guy, Christian Wood, man, he's looking like one of the steals. I know in our drafts, someone took him in the 4th round. That was Dalton. Super excited to jump on the Wood. And I think most leagues were probably getting him, mid to late 5th, maybe even in the 6th round. But he's looking like a really good core piece for the Houston Rockets. So I really like that. And then a couple other things that just, stuck out here.
One thing with Wood is those 2 different games. One game he had 13 rebounds. The other he had, 4?
Yeah, 3.
So you'd like to kind of see that consistently, in the middle there. I don't think Wood should have a problem getting 8, 9, 10 rebounds a game. So
Yeah, so we're just at that point where we have, 2 or 3 data points. Things are
yeah,
gonna slowly start to just average out, but it's kinda fun to see the spikes. A guy like Larry Nance in that first game, he put up 54 and a half, fantasy points, and now he gets the opportunity without Kevin Love. So, guys are certainly going to rise and fall and kinda come back to the mean. So excited about that. I did want to maybe we'll start with this and we'll kinda just look at percent rostered, and I wanna kinda just go down. So of course you have your hundreds like Luca, Anthony Davis, Giannis, but we're not really here to tell you guys to look at these players. These guys are all studs for a reason. So I'm just gonna kind of go down to like a page here where here's a guy, Jared Allen at about 67.8% rostered. He's seen a change in percent. This is another way I like to filter too. If I'm looking on my desktop, I will filter by some of these and see who's been the hottest ad. And at 8.2%, Jared Allen is a guy that's been cleaning up the rebounds. You see 15, 14, 11. He's not going to be an elite scorer, but he shoots, layups and dunks. So he's just going to clean things up while Kyrie and Kevin Durant are kind of doing their thing. But man, these rebounds, especially if you need a guy in a category league, if he's available, again, he's probably owned in most leagues, but at 2/3 here, he's a good candidate here. I know you've been a fan of Jared Allen there. Anything else to add with, I guess, Allen and maybe the Brooklyn Nets? You probably watched a little bit of them so far.
yeah. I've been watching the Nets, and Allen's a guy I actually drafted, maybe a little higher than anticipated, but I like what his potential brings in that offense. It's rebounds and blocks, and he's going to get the easy points. So you're not going to probably see many 20-point games from him, but you are going to see those 8, 10 points, and then filling out those rebounds, double digits, and getting the blocks, which are big fantasy, points to hit.
And I guess this is just a tool that I like to use because typically, like, I use my phone to set my lineups and stuff. But when I'm doing actual research for guys that I want to look up or add to my watch list, I'm always on the desktop. So for me, it's really easy to filter. I like to filter by team, and I'm looking at the top 4 or 5 players from each team because that's just where the fantasy points end up going. So of course Durant, of course Irving, but on the games where Kevin Durant or Irving sit, you're going to see a lot of Karis LeVert, and this guy. He had a weird game here, 8.25 against Boston on Christmas. But 3 out of 4 games, you've seen elite production here: 28, 4, and 11, and 5 steals. This was the game where I think both Durant and Kyrie Irving sat. So on those games where Durant's or Irving's not playing, this is definitely a guy here that's going to fill the stat sheet. He's probably their third best player. But Allen here too, he is just kind of the ultimate cleanup guy. And I don't know if there's anybody else that really sticks out that's a must own for me on the Brooklyn Nets here. DeAndre Jordan, of course, has some value with the rebounds and just being some dirty blocks and some steals and stuff like that. But I really like filtering by team. Another one that I kind of wanted to talk about is this is a topic Dalton and I we were talking about this on the side, and because he likes to filter and look by the teams too. And we just noticed on draft day, Oklahoma City, only 3 players were drafted in our league. And if you think about a starting 5 unit, pretty much every team has 5 players worth owning. And the guys that stuck out here that I think Dalton added pretty quickly was Luguentz Dort. And this is the guy that's only 16.7% owned. And now that it's really all about SGA. George Hill is good backup there, but he's not even playing tonight. I don't know what his injury is, but this is a guy here who's going to get a lot of opportunity. You see 32, 35 minutes, really good points. He does have the ability to kind of spread out the stat sheet and get some numbers here. And he's only 16.7% owned. I don't know, Drake, if you've had any thoughts on Oklahoma City Thunder or what we've seen so far, but I like looking for opportunity. And on a team where we're not expecting much, especially this is like a team like the Pistons, guys that are just going to be young players that they're just going to let and put out there and get minutes. So that's kind of what I look for when I'm looking for waiver wire ads. But anything on the Thunder or any kind of things that have been on your mind there?
The Thunder are kind of a different team because you mentioned there was only a few players owned out of their entire starting, roster, but we just don't really know what they're going to be. We're 3 games into the season again, like you said, and are some of these guys getting moved? This seems like a team that's going to be, filtering in players in and out. So I actually jumped on the George Hill bandwagon, just because he was playing a decent amount of games this week. So I jumped on that. And he also gets that point guard, shooting guard.
Yep.
Which Hill's an efficient player. He's not going to score an insane amount of points for you. But if you need 20, you can always count on Hill for that when he's in.
And that's kind of my baseline point. Like my worst player or two, they need to put up at least 20, 25 points. Yep. So if you find a guy that George Hill in a 2-game sample, he's played 24 and 25 minutes, but he's collected over 30 points both times. So I don't know if this is just like a rest day for him since they know he's got a big week ahead of him. I think they play 4 games this week as a team. So George Hill is definitely going to be a guy here. He's only 14.6% owned. And the other the other starter here, Darius Bazley, this is a guy that's been flirting with double-doubles through 2 games so far. He has shown the ability to get blocks too at the small forward position. This is a guy that I've added to my watch list. I'll do it right now. And he's just a guy that if anyone cuts and you need someone for a game or two, that's kind of what it is you're just kind of looking to filter the ends of your bench here. But we'll kind of get back to, is there any team, Drake, in mind that you wanted to look at, or should we start looking more at those kind of fringe players that should be on rosters, or what did you want to go with here?
Yeah, let's start looking at some of the players and work our way through.
So I'm going to kind of get back to that Jarrett Allen page because he was, again, about 67% owned. I'll even go a little bit lower, and we'll start to look for guys. So for me, I have a weird decision to make with Brook Lopez. The Milwaukee Bucks offense as a whole has just been weird. I know they're still playing 10, 11, 12 guys with the rotation and trying to figure things out. But this is a guy I took probably in the 9th or 10th round. I'm sure most other people did too. But 21, 20, and 29 minutes, he's just not staying on the court very long. His high for rebounds this year has been 4. He's still getting blocks, but no games over 20 points. So tonight, I know starting probably pretty soon here, they're going to be taking on the Miami Heat. So he's got another game tomorrow night. So I have a 2-game sample here with Brook Lopez before I decide what to do. But in terms of guys who I think should be owned, is Brandon Clark. He's at 51.7%. I'll let you kind of talk about what's going on in Memphis. We haven't talked about those injuries yet. But this was a guy I was high on coming into the year. He kind of disappointed the first 2 games, but last night he showed that, hey, he's back with the points, he's back with the rebounds, and he's also chipping in some stuff here. But Memphis Grizzlies, man, break the news.
So we got Ja Morant out. How long is it, Kyle? Do we have an official timeline?
Let's see, 3 to 5 weeks.
3 to 5 weeks. So, from a fantasy perspective, when you're looking at Ja, please don't drop him. Use that IR spot. Don't get, little click happy and get rid of him for someone. Keep him there. 3 to 5 weeks in the NBA. Sometimes that can become longer. We really don't know. But that kind of changes everything in Memphis when we're looking at the structure of that team. Who's going to take over that second score? Who's going to take over that main scoring role?
That's another reason why I kind of do like a guy like Brandon Clark to take on a more scoring role. We know Ja Morant was their best score-making player, and all of a sudden he's out.
We got Dylan Brooks. Maybe he starts taking on.
Nice game last night too in his relief. Let me go back to this. So Dylan Brooks, he's also 2-position eligible, which is really nice, but he scored 24 points for them last night. He scored 16, 19, and 24. You're going to probably see him shoot between 15 and 20 times a game going forward. So this is a guy that's going to get a lot of opportunity. And the thing I like here is he's also going to fill all 3 main categories. He's a shooting guard, small forward, so he's not going to get blocks, but you like just the spread even, rebounds, assists, and steals. That's going to boost his floor every night. And then is it a hot shooting night? I mean, he scored 24. That's a 41-point game here. So Dylan Brooks is probably going to be a really hot waiver wire add. He's only 48.4% owned too. So this is a guy that is likely, available in your league. Just looking quickly at so this is their depth chart. You're going to see Tyus Jones slide into the starting point guard spot, and he essentially took over 35 minutes of that game last night. So here's Tyus Jones's numbers. He's only 2.3% owned. You do see he's plus 1.4 in the last day. So this is a guy that's probably going to be jumping to the top of people's ads. But in 35 minutes, only 9 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, 2 steals, though. So this is, again, not a guy that you expect to score 20 points a night, but he's going to chip in on everything that he does. And if he's getting 30-plus minutes, This is a point guard that can help you. I don't know if you have any other players here, but I did notice Kyle Anderson as well. This guy's been scoring points here. I think this is a career high for him, 28 points, 7 boards. He had 14 and 10 boards in 2 of the games already too. And he's only 19.9%. This is kind of like a team here that I was talking about before. Just you're looking at their top 5 or 6 players, and now that the number one guy is gone, opportunity is going to be knocking. And a lot of these guys are really low owned. So if you can get one of them, I mean, it's probably a good shot for at least 20, 25 points here. But any other thoughts, real quick, on the Memphis injury with Morant?
No, I think you hit it perfectly. Kyle Anderson's a player I like a lot. He can really score. They brought him over from the Spurs a couple of years ago, and it's someone that the Grizzlies really like. I look for him to kind of take that next step up role while Morant's gone as well.
Why does it feel like he's so old? He's only 27.
I think it's because we're so old.
Yeah, we're technically older than Kyle Anderson, but we've just seen him in the league for a long time, and now
I think he was drafted at 19 or.
He's been around, and he's going to get the opportunity here. I don't think a lot of people expect. I mean, people expect Memphis with Ja Morant to compete for a playoff bid, but no one really knows what's going to happen with everybody else outside Morant. So I do like that.
Yep.
Jaren Jackson is also a guy. Just keep an eye on. He's only 66.7% owned. If you do have an IR spot, you can add him and just kind of stash him. But there is potential for him to get going towards the end of January here. And just because Morant's going to be out, there's going to be available shots to be had, and he's one of the best big man shooters. So I do like him. And the other guy again too is Brandon Clark, only 51.7% owned. This was a guy that averaged a good amount of scoring points last year. So he's like a true shooting power forward. And he's going to slowly start to get these rebounds, assists, and steals back up. So Grizzlies, definitely a team to keep an eye on here. Did we want to talk a little bit about Karl Anthony Towns and what's going on in Minnesota?
Yeah, start us out.
So Karl Anthony Towns, I think he's out for 2-3 weeks. So I don't see a timetable here, but it says he was diagnosed with a left wrist dislocation. He's going to be evaluated on a weekly basis. So that really doesn't give us much info. We do know that he is listed as out. You can probably bank on him being out for at least 2-3 weeks. We'll probably know more in a week or so. But this is a guy, the best player on that team. He was a top 5-6 pick in our NBA drafts for fantasy, and all of a sudden, where do you go to? I think that the popular pickup here has been Naz Reid. I saw he was, he's starting to gain some steam here, only 5.1% rostered. If you need a center position, this is probably the guy you're looking for. On the 27th here, 28 minutes, 11 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, 2 steals. So he's kind of like a do-it-all kind of big man here. You'll probably see some of those blocks creep in as well. But if you did have Karl Anthony Towns, this is probably the first guy that I would recommend going to get. But I guess now that Towns is out, that's also going to open up a lot of shots and a lot of opportunities here. Any thoughts on guys like D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards?
What about Jarrett Culver? Jarrett Culver is really kind of coming into his role this year. A guy I kind of played around with for a couple games at the beginning of the year, and I benefited from that. He's going to start getting more shots as probably that second best option on offense with D'Angelo Russell and him running the offense essentially now. I think Culver's a guy to look at. I don't know what his percentage owned is, but he can also play multiple positions, and just one of those guys you can put on your roster, drop a couple times, add him again.
And they have a really interesting rotation because like their best depth is at this shooting guard, small forward position. They got Malik Beasley, Anthony Edwards, Jarrett Culver. They're trying to figure out how to get these guys all their minutes. That's probably their best depth. And then you still got Rubio to balance out the Russell there. But now with Karl Anthony Towns out, we might see them go a little bit smaller. Maybe even Hernan Gomez can be their center at times, and they get a guy like Edwards and Culver on the floor together. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen with the minutes the next few games here. But yeah, you did mention Jarrett Culver. He's got that 2-position eligibility that we love to see here. And he's getting more consistent. I think last year he was one of those guys that I was interested in the first couple of weeks, but you just didn't see anything that was worth, holding on to. But now that he's got a full season behind him, he's only 7.7% rostered here. So this could be a guy, if you're looking to add a player for a game, snag him, and maybe he can get you one of those 14 and 6 nights, or he got a double against Detroit here too. So you do see some good things from the second-year player there. A couple other guys here. I'm just looking at their percent rostered. One guy that is widely available in a lot of leagues is Malik Beasley. He's a really good scorer for them. He has scored 23, 18, and 8. He's probably one of their leaders in minutes outside of Karl Anthony and D'Angelo Russell. And this is a guy that's going to continue to chip in elsewhere here. So there's going to be some opportunity going on there in Minnesota. Were there any other injuries, Drake, that we needed to make sure we covered and just talked about opportunity?
We could hit on the Nets with Spencer going out. Kind of to your point earlier with Chris LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie is out for the season.
Yes.
So now we're opening up even more minutes, and don't get too attached to what position these guys play. NBA teams are going to start playing their best players and just running rotations like that, whether you play 1 through 5. So I think we'll get more LeVert. I just wanted to hit on that. To your emphasis that LeVert's probably a good pickup or trade target.
Yeah, and I mean, it looks like LeVert's 88.6% owned, so the chances of him being available are pretty slim here, but this is definitely probably the guy that's just going to get a little bit more boost with Dinwiddie out. I don't know if maybe Joe Harris is the biggest benefactor of a guy like Dinwiddie being out, because they kind of share that shooting guard, the 2-3 guard role sometimes. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. And just in those games where Durant and Irving sit on like the second end of a back-to-back, you're going to see some of these guys. Like if I know that Durant and Irving aren't playing, that's when I'll look towards a Joe Harris just for a one-game ad kind of situation, just because those minutes are going to be there. So super, super interesting with the Brooklyn, the load management stuff going on. But I did want to just filter real quick by IR eligible and just see if anybody else sticks out. In terms of percent owned, again, we talked about Kevin Love. Let's talk about Rui Hachimura. But I just want to get a thought from the chat room here. Thoughts on Gary Trent Jr. Anything? Have you watched any of Gary Trent this year in Portland? I saw a little bit of Portland earlier. He looks like he's day to day. He's questionable with a calf, but he just had a really big game, 28 points the other night here.
I think Dame was out of that game, or
I think here. Let me filter to. Let's go ahead and filter to Portland real quick. So, Mr. Lillard.
Did Gary Trent Jr. ask us this question?
Yeah, Gary Trent Jr. is in our chat room asking about
Sweet.
Gary Trent Jr. That's pretty cool.
Well, welcome, Gary.
So Lillard did play. Lillard and McCollum both played.
Okay.
So, in terms of minutes, you see Gary Trent get 24. I don't know what happened in this weird game against Houston. Only 6 minutes, and then 26. So I think it might have to do something with that calf injury here. But it looks like he played last night. This guy's a really good scorer. He's not going to really chip in too much in the other points department. So this is probably going to be a pretty boom bust guy. But again, only 4.2% owned.
I would, probably monitor his minutes and his usage. If he's one of those main guys coming off the bench for Portland, then probably a guy you want to roster if he continues to score consistently.
And I wanted to just pull up a box score from last night, and then just someone had to be out for him to get all those minutes. It was a game that they won against the Lakers, so it was definitely one that they were trying to give it their best. But 24 minutes, the best player off the bench for them. Their starters are just going to command so many heavy minutes here. So I like guys like Cantor and Trent Jr. for scoring potential off the bench. But man, 14 field goals. I don't know if you're going to see that opportunity all the time here. But again, 7 of 11 threes. That's also something that I don't know if is very sustainable. So I do like Gary Trent. I don't know if I'm going to be trusting what I see here. Again, 7 of 11 threes for one game here. I don't think we can bank on that being something that's going to be sustainable here. So this is a guy that I will add to my watch list. But I don't know if I'm going to trust him right away again. But he's only 4.2% owned. If you wanted to add a guy for a game or two, this could be something worth adding here. But again, with the Portland Trailblazers, they're very starter heavy here. They're not gonna pass up for these guys to get some of these guys on the bench. So let's see here. We got Dalton Burkett in the chat room here. What's going on, Dalton? And he's asking about Cantor past Jusuf Nurkic. So Nurkic played 26 minutes. and Cantor played 22. Cantor was one of those guys that I did have my eye on in terms of being very productive with his minutes. I think Michael Schmidt added him today, but you see the minutes here, 22, 18, and 26. He's basically getting more than a point per minute in terms of fantasy. So I really like that. I don't think he's past Nurkic. Maybe they're just being cautious with Nurkic to begin the season, but you're going to see probably some kind of maybe.
Portland's always a team that likes to have that center as one of the main guys coming off the bench.
Right.
You saw it last year with Whiteside. They just have always seemed to have that 1-2 center punch that they're going to bring in, and Cantor's the perfect role for that. I wouldn't say anyone passed anyone up. But it's nice to see Cantor. He's a good fantasy player when he's getting minutes.
Yeah, and he's basically more than a point per minute here. So I do like Cantor. I don't think he's passing him just yet, but like I said, like opportunity happens. Nurkic hasn't really been a healthy player in the NBA so far, so Cantor's one of those guys at 11.8% owned. He's technically useful as is. So if anything happens to Nurkic, this guy's he's gonna shoot up to the top here and probably flirt with 30 minutes and just be one of those rock solid players for your lineup. So
and you probably see when Portland's playing a team without a traditional center, maybe we get more Cantor moments. Maybe that's something to look at when they're able to match up, not going against AD or Joker or someone like that. So maybe we see Cantor have a bigger role when they're not playing against a traditional center team.
And just because we play in a points league, so you see 33.25, 22.25, 24.25. If this is the worst player on my team, this is great news for me, right? I'm totally cool with this. And in those games where if anything happens to Nurkic or if there's a blowout either way, they're going to play Cantor a little bit more. I just think there's really no downside to having Cantor on your bench as one of your worst players. So at under 12% owned, this is definitely a guy that he caught my eye. I missed him by maybe like 20 minutes today when I was doing my research. Michael Schmidt snagged him there. And then we got Gary Trent. Is that Dylan Brooks here? That's spelled the wrong way. Threw me for a second.
Yeah.
But touched on Dylan Brooks real quick. He's probably going to be the way it looks. I know Jonas is there. He's going to be one of their big dogs in terms of just minutes and just everything's going to run through him. But Dylan Brooks is probably going to lead the team in shot attempts. We saw 19 shots last night. This is a guy 16, 19, and 24. He's probably going to settle somewhere in just about 20 points per game for the next 4 or 5 weeks. And he's less than 50% owned. So this is a guy that should be owned in pretty much any format. Again, he's got that magical 2-position eligibility that we've stressed enough love for so far. So Dylan Brooks, definitely a guy here that I think needs to be owned. I'm just looking back here, and there's a good one. We were talking about this a little bit here with Luguentz Dortz. This is a guy that Dalton picked up in our big league here. So let me quick filter to Oklahoma City Thunder. I think the theme tonight so far has been teams with opportunity. And in my side conversation with my friend Dalton in the chat room here, we were talking about Oklahoma City Thunder. Only 3 players were drafted from this team in our basketball league. So there's going to be more than 3 useful players on any given basketball team. And Luguentz Dort, so far in just 2 game sample, he's been over 32 minutes in both games, 15 and 26 points. He's going to fill out, almost every category here. He does have, as a shooting guard, you like that he can get blocks and then the rebounds, assists, and steals. So he's going to chip in pretty much everywhere throughout the board. He had a really efficient shooting night on last night here, 9 of 11 shooting, 5 from 7 of the 3-pointers. So that's going to be kind of on the high end, but I think he's just going to kind of settle in somewhere and just be about a 30-point per game player. And he's only 16.7% owned. So this is definitely a guy here that I think Oklahoma City Thunder doesn't have a lot of playmakers, guys.
Do you remember Dort's name from the bubble? I think that's when it first popped up. He was filling in for someone, and when the Oklahoma City Thunder were playing.
Was he on Oklahoma City Thunder last year?
Yeah, and I don't know if he was added because of the bubble or what the situation was. How many games did he play?
I'm looking for game logs. Let's go to.
Is that 9? Does that say 9 games?
So in the regular season here, So in the playoffs, he did get a handful of games in here. He put up a 30-point game against Houston.
Yeah, I remember some Dort moments that were impressive.
And it looks like he was getting some, over 20 minutes per game here. So they did get a good look at him last year a little bit. You do see some rebound. Like he's a guy that's just going to chip in, in all stats across the board. And again, as a shooting guard, had a game with 3 blocks.
Yeah, he's a hustler. He plays good defense. They
scrappy.
kind of liked him to fill in that Andre Roberson role. So I think Dort's a good guy to keep an eye on or just add.
I think at this point he's an ad.
Yeah.
Just at 16.7% owned. No one really knows much about him. Being a second-year player, not a lot of name notoriety in the draft either. This is a guy that he's probably the second, third best player on this team when Al Horford's at least not on the lineup. So I'm a big fan of Dort. I think George Hill is definitely a guy to keep an eye on too. This is a young team. I'm interested to see if maybe Hill gets moved. But as far as fantasy points, again, I love looking for opportunity. I just don't think people are expecting much from Oklahoma City Thunder this year. So I think they're going to be loose with their lineups and trying different things and basically just seeing who's going to be a good complement to SGA and Horford. So Luguentz Dort, man, he's a guy that can definitely benefit. And with SGA being such a good distributor, he's averaging 8.0 assists per game so far. And Dort, he just hit 5 out of 7 threes. So this is a guy that's going to not be afraid to shoot. So I do like that quite a bit.
Is there another team in the NBA that compares to the Thunder right now when you're looking at
in terms of like are in their rebuild
fantasy perspective,
the fact that 5 players owned.
Yeah, is there another team that really compares to where they're at right now?
Maybe Detroit. Detroit's only got 5 guys owned, actually 6. I have Josh Jackson. I did want to talk a little bit about Josh Jackson because I found him to be a pretty good value so far. And just they moved him into the starting lineup. If you look here, let's just pull up the starting rotation here for Detroit. And
Josh Jackson looked pretty good last year.
He did. What's weird though is he was the 4th overall pick in like 2017 or something, right?
Yeah, out of Kansas.
Not that long ago, and he's bounced around. I think he was in the G League at some point last year. Just no one's really giving him a chance. But
was he with the Grizzlies last year?
He was.
He was at? Yep, that's right.
So this starting lineup right now, of course, the rookie Killian Hayes. Josh Jackson actually hopped DeLon Wright in the last game. Jeremy Grant's going to get a lot of opportunity. Blake Griffin, when he's healthy, you're going to love it. And then Mason Plumlee. But just look at who else are they going to run out here? I think Sadiq Bey started tonight. But who else do they have here to compete for minutes? So I do think
you're going to see talent take over there, and they're just going to be playing the naturally talent guys. I think Dwayne Casey will just play guys he think will get main guys going forward with his rebuild who he can kind of see potential out of.
And then one of my thinkings is Josh Jackson. This is a guy who's looking to stick around somewhere. And the way things are going this year, like it seems like, Jeremy Grant's a part of the Detroit Pistons rebuild plans for a little bit. But they need another scorer here, and Jackson's bounced around in his 3 years in the league. He's got every opportunity. Like if he can't make it here, he really can't make it, anywhere else. So I'm expecting good things from Josh Jackson. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a contract with him. But last night in 28 minutes, he put up 27 points, 4 boards, with 2 assists, a steal, a block. So he's a guy that's not only going to put up a good amount of actual points, in the column there, but he's going to chip in kind of elsewhere here. He's playing right now. He's got 13.75 points. I think that game's just starting in the second quarter here. So Josh Jackson, 8.8% owned. And the crazy part is he's one of those guys that is plus 8.4% in the last couple of days here. Mason Plumlee, also another guy here. This was someone that I highlighted at the beginning of the year just because opportunity. They don't really have a true backup center. This is a guy that's playing over 30 minutes. He's going to flirt with, 8 to 10 rebounds at least each night. You don't expect much of the points, but he's getting steals. He's getting assists. He's kind of just a do-it-all player here. So I guess back to the question of who does Oklahoma City kind of remind me of? They remind me of Detroit, teams that are searching for their identity. And to be honest, like Oklahoma City, I think is in a better position. They at least have a superstar already to build, with SGA. As far as Detroit, like, is Jeremy Grant a superstar that they can build around?
Yeah, Detroit's in a sad position right now.
I really don't know, man. It's they got a lot of work to do, but hopefully they can add a couple pieces in the draft the next couple years here. But again, I'm really curious about teams with uh, a lot of opportunity. You know, they're going to let the minute shake out how they do. But talent rises. Josh Jackson, former fourth overall pick, I think in 2017, and he's starting to catch my eye here again. 27 points last night. I just want to kind of check the comments real quick here. Gary Trent Jr. I want to thank Gary Trent for hanging out with us tonight. I'm glad to have you.
Thank you, sir.
He's saying Markelle Fultz having a breakout year so far. I know you've been one of the leaders for the Markelle Fultz train in the pre-draft process. So I'll let you kind of go about that while I pull some numbers up.
Yes, I've been very happy to see what Fultz has done this year, and it all started last year. He's starting to get his groove with the Magic. You know, we don't have all this attention on is he that third superstar for the Sixers and all that. He's playing his game well. And what did he put up last night or the other night?
26.
26, yeah. Good to see Fultz doing that. Pre-draft process, a guy I was high on just from watching him play in the bubble, just because I love to watch the Milwaukee Bucks, not as a Milwaukee Bucks fan, but as a viewer. And, Fultz just looked good coming off the bubble games and then going into the playoffs. So I like his potential. He was the first overall pick for a reason. Maybe he's found his spot, and I think you hit it. He's breaking out, and I would love to own him on my fantasy team.
In a way, he's like, of course, the former number one overall pick. Like, there's a lot of expectations with that. I think it's actually a good thing for him to go to a team like Orlando with like basically no, like, not to like badmouth it, but Orlando doesn't have a lot of expectations. A team like Philadelphia demands greatness from any of their sports in Philadelphia. Like, those fans will let you know if you're not playing well. So I do like the potential.
I think Philadelphia, just kind of really over
short leash.
Yeah, thought his potential, and not his potential, but just what he was going to do right away in the NBA game. And we've seen in the past years, that's really hard for a point guard to come into the NBA and get up to speed. This guy was playing in Washington. He's not playing night in, night out NBA talent. And Philly wanted him to be the third superstar there. That's what they expected. And
are we concerned at all about the draft pick Cole Anthony? Potentially, is that just a guy that they wanted as a complimentary piece? Do you think they're committed to Markelle Fultz and they're just like, we're going to take the best player on our board?
I think they took the best player on their board, and we've seen some good play from Cole Anthony. I actually rostered him for a couple games, and because after the first game, I saw his minutes were down, the points weren't there, but his assists, and
boards too.
Yeah, his boards. So this is a guy that's going after it. He's the son of a former NBA player. He kind of knows what it takes. Played at UNC. I like Cole Anthony a lot, but I don't think he takes away from what Fultz is going to do this year.
Yeah, I think Fultz is probably going to earn a pretty good contract with
Cole Anthony probably fills in right now for them that DJ Augustine role.
Exactly. I think that's what I was just going to say too. Is they had a role there for someone.
Yeah. He's not DJ Augustine, but
Anthony's in a really good spot because he can come in with that number two offense and just kind of get his feet wet, and he's playing pretty well. Yeah, like I watched them the other night because I'm a huge Terrence Ross guy, and Cole Anthony, man, he doesn't look overwhelmed. The game's very slow for him. So rookie, this is probably going to be a guy that I'm going to be looking at like really hot next year as a guy that I like those second and third year players, and he's already impressed.
And you can pay attention to him this year. Put him on your watch list and
one of those
see what happens.
If he's got 2 games, back to back, pick him up for Tuesday, Wednesday night tilt. Could get you 40 points, something like that. But the guy here, just while we're looking at Orlando, the guy here that's only 33% owned in leagues, and I think he might be their leading scorer, so far, is Terrence Ross. This guy is one of the best unknown shooters, I think, in the league. I love watching Terrence Ross play. He's a sharpshooter, 26 points, 25, and 19 so far in 3 games. He's not going to stuff the stats for rebounds, assists, and steals. He'll get a couple things, through each game to kind of balance it up here. But this is a pure scoring play. He's shooting guard, small forward eligible. But again, he's going to put up a good amount of shots here. He's usually the first guy off the bench for them. And I really, at 33% owned, he should be on everyone's roster. You just look at, again, 22.75 points, 32 points, 27.5 points. This is a guy that I drafted in the 13th round of our draft here. So I was very excited to get these free points here. So Terrence Ross, 33% owned. I did want to kind of roll over the comments and see what's going on here. Gary Trent saying, keep my eye on Kevin Porter Jr. Drake, do you want to quickly talk about Kevin Porter Jr.?
Kevin Porter Jr. going in from last year. I kept him on my team, on and off for a couple of weeks, definitely as a Cavs fan, but the guy can score. He can do everything for you on the offensive end. He's an exciting young player. Hasn't played yet. We had the, off the court issues this offseason, and the Cavs are fully committed to him, and they're going to work him into that rotation. Kevin Porter Jr. is he's just an exciting player to watch play basketball, and if he stays out of his own way, I like him going forward with fantasy.
So when he comes back to the lineup, who gets hurt here in terms of fantasy points? We like Darius Garland. I don't know if Kevin Porter Jr. maybe he just comes back into the starting lineup and you push Okoro out.
Kevin Porter Jr., if you look back to it, he played really well with Garland. So I'm not sure if he gets into that starting role. Probably not. Maybe he comes off the bench and is kind of rolling in as that 6th, 7th man off the bench, bring some energy and score some points and kind of see where it goes from there.
So again, I'm not really sure how long he's going to be out for. It looks like they're saying he's going to be fairly limited, at least the next couple of weeks. But if you have an IR spot, this is a guy that I think is worth stashing, especially if you have multiple IR spots. Why not add somebody here, block people from getting him?
For whatever it's worth, I wanted Kevin Porter Jr. last year when we took Garland. And he wasn't projected that high. We actually got him with the last pick in the first round. They traded back up. But I love watching Kevin Porter Jr. play basketball when he's in there.
That's a good comment there, Gary Trent. Thank you for your contributions. And then I'm just kind of looking around here. Dalton saying the Bucks are on pace for 160 with 3 minutes in the first. I gotta watch that. But looks like I don't think Jimmy Butler's playing tonight. So there's the Cole Anthony comment here.
How long is Butler out?
I thought he was just day to day. Let me just pull this up real quickly. Why am I looking at Chicago? I should look at Miami. So day to day ankle. He's ruled out today. He was considered doubtful. It was a back-to-back. So I think they play tomorrow night.
How about Tristan Thompson on the Celtics right now?
Let's pull that up. He's taken over. I had high hopes for Daniel Tice at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, Thompson is just plug and play right now.
And he's not even getting a lot of minutes yet. For some reason, they said that he'll remain on a minutes restriction. So he had a hamstring injury, I guess, in November here. So this is a guy that's just putting up floor numbers right now, hovering around 20 fantasy points per game here. Young ascending talent. The Boston Celtics have no reason not to get him more involved as the season wears on. He's only 13.4% owned. He's strictly center eligibility here, but this is the guy definitely to keep an eye on. Again,
he's only center eligibility.
I was optimistic about Daniel Tice because I knew Thompson was hurt a little bit. I expected a lot more minutes than 11, 15, 23, and 25. So pretty disappointed there, but it looks like Tristan Thompson's going to be the main guy. I would expect within the next week or two, you're going to slowly keep seeing his minutes and his production ramp up. So again, only 13.4% owned. Definitely a guy to keep an eye on. If anyone's dropped him in your league, go ahead and fire away there. And a couple more from Gary Trent. OG Anunoby and Darius Bazley have good minutes, and Seti Osman and Lonnie Walker. Yes. A couple of those guys I'm a big fan. Seti, you want to talk about Mr. Osman real quick?
Yeah. kind of expected him to take over, not take over that role, but he was supposed to fill in when after LeBron left to that position. Kind of been slow moving for him. He tends to have these kind of streaks, though. So if you're looking at adding him, proceed with caution. You might. This is also, like we talked about, we got Okoro and we have Kevin Porter Jr. coming back. You probably see some, Osman minutes going down. He's a good basketball player, but I wouldn't get too excited about what you're seeing right now. Keep him in your lineup when he's getting the minutes, but we see these streaks with him.
With Kevin Love, we're out for a little bit here. Is there an opportunity for the Cavs to play him at the 4 position and kind of do a small shooting lineup?
They could play some small ball with him. I expect with Love out, you're gonna probably see Isaac going into that role when he's healthy and when Kevin Porter Jr. comes back. So I'm not sure how much Osman's contribution continues. Probably the main ball handlers with Sexton and Garland, maybe they get more opportunities, and also Drummond.
So I'm a little lukewarm on the Osman, but Larry Nance Jr., this is definitely a guy, as long as Kevin Love's out, this is going to be a high volume per minute player, 51.4% owned. You see the staggering 27.3% increase in ownership over the last few days. He's the biggest benefactor here. I think
Larry's a good basketball player, and he's just going to get you kind of like those Cody Zeller stats while you're holding on to him.
He's never going to be, but he's just going to keep collecting.
Yep.
And then I guess the good one, a couple of the guys here, I think OG Anunoby, I'll touch on that one because I've been a big fan of his. But Lonnie Walker, I actually just made a move where I dropped Lonnie Walker. Very disappointed to do it. But we'll just kind of look at what he's been doing. I've been impressed with the minutes here. And because Derek White's still out, I think there's maybe 2 weeks away from Derek White coming back. So that could really mess up the minutes rotation for the young guards here in San Antonio. But Lonnie Walker kind of just a pure scoring fantasy type player here. You see 16, 14, and 16 total points. He's going to chip in loosely between the rebounds, assists, steals, even can get some blocks. But through 3 games, you see 23.0, 19.25, and 31.25 here. So some really good stuff from Lonnie Walker. And again, as potentially the worst player on your bench, if he's going to hover at a low point around 20 points with that potential, to snag extra rebounds and assists and some steals and end up somewhere around the 30s, this is definitely a guy here. I like his opportunity, but I'm leery of how long it will last with Derek White coming back soon. I think that could really shake some things up. But the other guy here with the San Antonio Spurs, Mr. Keldon Johnson, this guy playing some really good ball, averaging around 30 minutes per game, and even more so than Lonnie Walker. This guy's 18.8% owned, and you just see some of the monster stats here: 14 and 11 boards, 9 boards, 5 boards, 5 and 3 assists. He's going to get steals. He's going to get blocks. Super. I didn't know much about Keldon Johnson coming into the year, but I've done some digging the last few games here, and I really like the opportunity for him here. I don't think Derek White's going to impact his. He's technically a 3 on the floor here, so I do like Keldon Johnson's long-standing opportunity. I think he's got potential to stay pretty steady here. So this is a guy under 20% owned. I think the Spurs are definitely a team that has a lot of potential on them. Any quick thoughts there on the Spurs? Lonnie Walker, Keldon Johnson, anything?
Lonnie's a guy I've liked since last year, since he was drafted out of Miami. He's just a scorer. The Spurs took him pretty high for them in the draft, and that's Kyle pretty much touched on. He's going to provide that scoring for you. And I don't, if you watch any of that bubble basketball, Lonnie Walker was a guy that kind of stuck out to me in the Spurs stats.
Why did he cut his hair? Why did he cut his hair though? I like the
It's pretty impressive.
But yeah, man, he's a second-year player. I like watching these second and third-year players because I think that's where the biggest leap for an NBA player is year 1 to year 2, and then.
And another thing to look at is you're in the Spurs organization. You're looking at Greg Popovich. He obviously believes in this guy, so that's someone that we're not talking. And this is no slight on the Thunder or the Cavs or any of their situations, but you can usually trust these players. If they're getting good minutes, they're probably good basketball players to have on your team.
Right, yeah. Popovich isn't messing around here. So we do like Lonnie Walker. I also like Keldon Johnson here. I think that's pretty much all the guys there that caught my eye here. But then a quick one, OG Anunoby. Let me just rant about my Raptors for a little bit here. I don't know why I like the Raptors. I just noticed there was opportunity there. So I was very interested in terms of fantasy. A couple guys here. Chris Boucher, 40% owned. And he's currently number 11 here in the power forward ranking, center position. The dude had 7 blocks the other night. You see 22 points, 10 boards, and 7 blocks. I would expect a block or 2 per night out of him. And the points aren't always going to be up there in the 20s. This is probably a floor game for Chris here at 12 points, 5 boards, 2 blocks. But again, that was only in 15 minutes here. So if this guy's minutes start to creep up into the 20s, you're probably looking at like a 25, 26, 27 point fantasy player. Again, a lot of opportunity on the Toronto Raptors here. They usually run a lot of starter minutes. And at the moment right now, he's their 4. So Chris Boucher, only about 40% owned. But you do see here that plus 31 here that I'm circling. That just means he's been a significant increase in ads in the last couple games here. So definitely like his opportunity. And then OG Anunoby. This is a guy that I was pretty high on coming into the season. You see the last 3 games, 31 points, 28 and a quarter, 30 and a half. He's hovering right around that 30 points per game, which is lovely. And this is a guy that just does everything. At the small forward position, he was kind of slow at the beginning of the year. Again, the first game of the year, he was 0 for 5 from 3. He typically shoots around, mid to upper 30s in the 3-point percentage. So this is a guy who's scoring. I expect it to trend upwards. But again, he's going to get rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks every night. So he's got a really high floor, and he's only 37.5% owned. So if you're looking for, potential small forward, a 4 or 5 guard or a 4 or 5 center here, Boucher and OG Anunoby are fantastic players to look for here. Anything to add there on the Raptors? I'm just looking real quickly here. Some deep league streamers from Gary Trent. Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter, Doug McDermott, PJ Tucker, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Dorian Finney-Smith. I'm glad you mentioned the 2 Atlanta Hawks young sharpshooters. Doug McDermott also, I added him to my watch list today. Indianapolis, the Pacers here. He's actually been a pretty consistent player for them so far. He's averaging, around 25 minutes per game. He's been double-digit points each of the 3 games here. He's going to be spotty kind of in the rest of the columns here. But if you remember Doug McDermott, I think he played back where did was he Creighton? I think he was one of those Creighton to watch in the NCAA tournament. But you remember him if you saw him play at Creighton.
Dougie McBuckets.
He was a pure scorer. He was fun to watch in college. And again, you just see as the worst player potentially on your team, if he's going to hover slightly over 20 points per game, I'm totally cool with that being my worst player. 2.2% owned. So this is a guy I like what I'm seeing. He's not an elite player, with the rest of the category. So if you're in a category league, maybe that's not for you unless you need more points. But definitely a guy here that's playing some good basketball. Any other thoughts? I guess, do you want to talk about the Atlanta Hawks with Cam Reddish and
Let me hit on DeAndre Hunter. Because he was actually a guy I added this week. He filled in 2 games for me, and he did exactly what I needed him to do. Was he the 6th overall pick last year? He's kind of coming into his role with the young Atlanta team, but he's going to get you all those categories that we talk about. You're not seeing high points, but he's going to get you rebounds. What did he get? 3 assists the other night?
3 and 3.
Yeah, 3 and 3. So just another one of those guys that's going to fill in that 20 points per game. I can add him on my team. Another thing to look at is we assume his points per game might go up. He's not scoring a lot right now, but maybe if he can hover in that like 13 to 14 range, you start rostering him.
But if I've watched one of the Hawks games because I just wanted to check in on Trae Young and John Collins. Mm-hmm. He's a fun player to watch even when he doesn't have the ball. Really competitive on defense. He moves really well to get open for his the opportunity to get the ball passed to him. And he's a very smart basketball player. I think going forward, the Atlanta Hawks have a really fun young core. DeAndre Hunter is one of those nice pieces. And then Cam Reddish here. the other guy, part of Gary Trent Jr. here in the chat room with all the good information. 11 points, 7 boards, 3 assists, 3 steals the other night here for Cam Reddish. He's going to be, again, he's an ascending young player. They're going to want to continue to play these young guys in Reddish and DeAndre Hunter and see what they can do. And he's getting a lot of minutes too here. So this is another team. I don't consider Atlanta Hawks in that Oklahoma City Thunder, Detroit Pistons territory. This is a young ascending team, but they're still trying to figure out what this young talent can do. And they're gonna play Hunter. They're gonna play Reddish. They're gonna get these guys a lot of minutes here. So I do like those two Atlanta Hawks calls there. We're going on about 55 minutes live here, Drake. I think we maybe 4 or 5 minutes we'll hang out here.
Okay.
In terms of, I think there was one more team that I wanted to touch on, at least for me, and that's the Charlotte Hornets. I don't feel great recommending this, but I added the guy, so I'm putting my money where my mouth is. But Cody Zeller was the starting center for the Charlotte Hornets to begin the year. We weren't really interested in Cody Zeller at all, but he's going to be out for, it looks like, 4 to 6 weeks with a hand injury here. He broke his hand. I'm not sure which bone in the hand, but he's out for at least 4 to 5, 6 weeks, which is going to make a lot of opportunity here for Bismack Biyombo. And this guy, the last 2 games with Cody Zeller sidelined, he's gotten 30 minutes in back-to-back games. 12 points, 6 boards, 1 assist, 1 block. The other game, only 5 points, but the 9 boards, the 4 assists, and the 2 blocks. This is a big man that is going to get a lot of opportunity at 23.5 points, 27.5 points. Totally cool with this guy being the worst player on my bench. And as long as Cody Zeller's out, I'm not letting go of this guy. There's going to be a lot of opportunity. Charlotte's always going to be a team that's, it's one of those younger teams where they don't really know what they have in a lot of their players, but with Zeller out of the way, they really don't have any other centers behind Biyombo to threaten him for minutes and playing time. So this is a guy that I feel good, even in a bad game script. If it's a blowout, Biyombo plays. If it's a big win, Biyombo probably helped win. So this is a guy here, only 3.6% rostered. I think he should be one of the hottest. If we look back at this in a week from now, he's probably going to be somewhere in the double digits for percent rostered. So Bismack Biyombo, anything from you real quick, Drake? Any one guy here? I don't know if there's any ads that you picked up on this week that you want to talk about, but final ad thoughts.
Just guys, I just want to give a little shout out to #basketball. If you guys are just looking at quick, easy stats to look at, not trying to filter through ESPN, just looking at pure basketball stats and also schedule stats, it'll give you it right there. It's a nice little spreadsheet. It'll be highlighted how many games you're playing. So this is something I look for every week when I'm making a pickup, because if you're making a pickup, we only get 5 in our league. I could use 12. Kyle could use 25. You got to kind of limit, okay, if I'm picking this guy up, I probably need to use him more than once type deal to fill in, kind of the cracks, because you want to have as many guys as you're going. Sometimes it's not the cream of the crop, but you want to be able to look at how many games they're playing, how many you're going to get out of them, and kind of make your weekly decisions from that. So that's a nice little Sunday night tool I like looking at, especially with Sunday night football coming to a close. We have some time to look at this stuff.
But here is this is the schedule grid you were just talking about here. You can see how many games, and it'll tell you even too how many games a team has. It looks like the most games a team's probably going to have in a week this year is going to be 4. So if you, I guess here, let's just do something for instance here. What's a team we've been talking about? The Memphis Grizzlies. We'll go with the Grizzlies because we talked a little bit. We didn't talk much about Tyus Jones, but I do think Tyus Jones is worth mentioning as a big ad because John Morant is going to be out for a while. Tyus Jones, again, stepped in for him 35 minutes last night. And this is a team here that plays 4 games this week. So I guess they played last night, but you could have potentially added a guy like Kyle Anderson, and you could have got 4 games out of him this week. And then it's typically when I make most of my moves on a Monday morning, right? Because you're setting up for the week. You're trying to steal an extra game or two, right? But what if that player impresses you during that week, and all of a sudden you find a guy that you don't want to cut anymore? All because you just looked at the opportunity, you had a good week, and all of a sudden this guy's a guy that you're going to stick around on your roster and build around. So I'm always a huge advocate for tinkering with that last one or two roster spots, always being willing to improve. Because with NBA, much like fantasy football, there's just so much in movement, injuries, even if it's like a 1 week thing or if a guy's got a tight hamstring and just minutes open up. But then some of those bigger injuries, like to Karl Anthony Towns, John Morant, a lot of opportunity all of a sudden opens up. But was there any other any cool tools here on hashtag basketball that you wanted me to click on?
That was kind of the main thing I wanted you guys to focus on. But definitely spend some time looking around. It's an easy to navigate site. You can get some different information. Don't try to get all your information just from what ESPN is saying. Projections and all that stuff, you can kind of work through that.
I guess one of my biggest things is during the year, once in a month from now, when I'm able to kind of click on this last 7, the last 15, the last 30 tab, that's when I really like to lean into ESPN, and I need to see, how many fantasy points a player's been averaging the last 7 days versus the last 15. I like to kind of stretch my filters that way a little bit. But I think for now, we were able to cover a lot of good ground here. I'm sure we missed a lot of players. If you guys liked the video tonight, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I think I'm going to be going live with John Heffernan either Thursday night or Friday morning, one of those two for sure. But we'll have another basketball show this week. And then again, I think going forward, Tuesday nights will be the nights. I don't know if 6:30 is a time for you, Drake. That always works. Maybe we bump it back to 7 or something. It's kind of an interesting time around dinner, but we will figure it out. We'll be here Tuesday nights going forward. But again, I just want to say thank you, Drake, for hanging out. Thank you to Gary Trent Jr., Dalton Priquette, anybody else here in the chat room that I thought we had. It's that other boy here. It looks like we had. That was pretty much it. We had some good action in the chat tonight. I want to thank you.
Thank you for the great questions, everyone. We love receiving them.
Yeah, and I think you guys, we're still kind of new with this show. We don't really know what we're doing. We're just kind of basically it's just me and Drake hanging out as friends and kind of just talking about stuff to get off our mind. So it's a good thing for us. Hopefully you guys learn a thing or two. But I think that's going to do it for tonight's show. You can follow Drake on Twitter at @theFellowDES. His link is in the description below on YouTube. So check him out there. Again, you know where to follow me. But again, I don't know. Thank you guys so much for your time. Have a good rest of your evening, and we'll see you in another video. Peace.